So I was supposed to go out last night and instead decided to stay in and watch the new Netflix series based on Margaret Atwood's novel, Alias Grace, hence the dark circles under my eyes. And I just watched the whole series during the whole night, and it's morning now and I really can't sleep because I have all these ideas and thoughts in my head. First of all, I want to say this is going to be spoiler free up until a certain point at least, which means that I will tell you when the spoiler arrives. Spoilers. Yes, English is not my first language, as you can tell. Spoilers. So the series is centered around a female character. She's named Grace, and we start the series knowing that she is in prison because she's facing a very serious charge, which is the fact that she murdered not only two people, but the how do you call it when she was working there as a slave, really? Servants. Yes, that's the word.
You don't seem afraid of me, Clary.
Afraid of you? For rising up against your master? Miss Grace, where do you think I come from?
A doctor, a psychologist of the time, is brought in to try to talk with her and understand if she's actually innocent or guilty so that they can bring forward her innocence and hopefully get her released. Bear in mind that this is a period piece, which I usually don't like. I usually don't like period pieces. It's really rare that I do. If I do, it's because they've done really well, and this is done really well. I was also really worried because I thought it was going to be a bad copy or, just a lesser copy than The Handmaid's Tale, which is instead on Hulu. But instead, I really liked it. I didn't like it as much as I liked The Handmaid's Tale. I have to say, for me, The Handmaid's Tale is absolutely top. But this is quite brilliant as well, and it is completely different, so it is not to say that you're going to like Alias Grace just because you like The Handmaid's Tale. Alias Grace is a little bit slower, especially in the first episode. It starts picking up in the second episode, I feel, but it's slower than The Handmaid's Tale. But once it picks up, you literally cannot look away. It's very well done, it's very well acted, and it's incredibly bizarre. It's a mixture, it's a period piece, but it's also a psychological, almost thriller, really, because you really try to understand her. Is she really that innocent? Is she just lying? Is she actually really violent and morbid and sexually forward, or is just really naive? Obviously, as soon as I finished watching the series, which was literally half an hour ago, I started reading up online to see what people were thinking about it, to see how it was reviewed and all these sort of things. And one of the things which I read the most online, which was really funny to me, was, it's feminist. It's a feminist series because basically because she has all of this power because she killed people. Okay, ground rules, being feminist and making a feminist piece does not involve killing people. If you kill people, you're not a feminist, you are a killer. So regardless of your gender, killing people is wrong. You don't go, you go girl because you kill someone. That's not what feminism is about, okay?
I recently took a women's studies class. Yes, because it was a requirement, but I learned a lot anyways. Like the culture that says it's okay for a man to objectify a woman for her appearance is the same culture that pressures girls as young as 10 to have eating disorders.
So you're basically saying I'm the one responsible for making you look hot? You're welcome.
The reason why it is feminist is because you see all of the sorts of abuses and mistreatments and just pain they had to go through and they have to go through throughout their lives. And you see that for them there is really not much of a choice, and that each of them knows that their relationships with male figures, with every male figure that comes across the series, has them as female characters fundamentally at a disadvantage point. You see, especially with obviously Grace, the female character, you see her starting off with her dad. And then as she starts to work as a servant, she obviously is put into this environment where she can pretty much observe the daily life of married couples, of couples in general, and the expectations that both women and men have. And she sees the differences between the two genders. The only character which is portrayed as an innocent male figure is a boy. His interactions with her are really boyish like, a really first love kind of thing. And more than love, it's really more like a crush, you know. He's sweet, he blushes, he just wants to be near her. He doesn't have this sort of predatory mindset that the other men that she encounters have, and she has some sort of warm feelings for him that comes more as a sort of sisterly feeling than anything else. And then even him turns out to betray her in a way or another. Then finally, one of the most important male characters, which is the psychologist, which is meant to help her out, it basically starts to develop an idea of her in his mind, which is, I believe, not true. At the beginning, he's portrayed as this really solid character, as this filled with integrity and a really strict moral code, and really interested in the science. He really just wants to understand who she is as a person. And I find it particularly telling that at the end, he's the one that develops the most morbid, weird, violent reactions to what he feels towards her, and without still having any idea who she is. It really is a sensitive, sensible, and incredibly raw look into what it means for a woman to be a woman, to have expectations regarding her future, what she could be, who she could be with, and especially how she is portrayed and felt by men. And I think that the series, once you understand that, if you feel the same way that I do, becomes incredibly depressing.
I even know what kind of hens and cow we will have. I want red and white leghorns and a Jersey cow for the cream and cheese. There's nothing better. And a cat named Tabby and a dog named Rex.
All of the women which had some sort of hope or positive expectations for the future don't end up so well. And I think she really learns by all of these other women and by all of the situations that she's surrounded with, and she learns to basically not expect anything anymore. She learns to be passive and give to these men what they want to hear, be who they want her to be, and so basically she nullifies herself and what she will want to have, because she knows there is no way that she could get it. If you haven't seen the series, pause, go watch the series, and then come back and see if you agree with my idea of my explanation of the ending and her character, and see if your interpretation is the same as mine, or if you have different ideas. I would love to hear them. So yeah, pause. Bye. For those of you who have watched it, I think obviously one of the biggest questions is about whether she did it or she didn't do it. You know, within these questions, there is the fact of knowing who she actually was. There are those who think that she was completely innocent, those who think that she was completely guilty. Then there is the theory of her having split personalities, the more mystical theory of her being either possessed by spirits or just her being completely crazy, which it's the worst theory ever. I think that she had a split personality, which is an actual disorder, and we know about that today. And we know that one person can be split between multiple personalities. Well, obviously she has been abused all her lives. We see the fact that she's abused by her father. She's obviously faced a lot of hardship, but I think that the focal point is when Mary dies, obviously. Mary has become her best friend. She is incredibly important to her. She's basically her only point of reference. And she loved her. I actually thought at the beginning, I don't know if it's my mind, which is obviously on, you know, gay ship turned on, but I actually thought that it was, at the beginning, there was some sort of sexual tensions between the two. So obviously we actually see her going into shock, severe shock when Mary dies. And then when she starts hearing the famous whisper, the famous voice, and the famous "let me in," which I actually don't think it's a mystical or spiritual thing. I think it's actually her buried personality that asks her to let her in and to take upon the pain for herself, because the dominant personality, which obviously can be Grace in this instance, takes upon the hardships for the weaker personalities, which in this case is Mary. So the moment that Mary dies, something snaps into Grace, and her buried personality, which obviously she translates as Mary, because as she often says, Mary is much more direct and aggressive than she is. She's much more open than Grace is. Takes upon the pain for her. And from now on, from that moment on, I think we have Grace, and we have the moment in which her demeanor is gentler, and her moral code is really strict. And the moments when we see Mary instead, when she is much more aggressive and outspoken, vulgar, and obviously downright violent. In fact, after she hears the famous whisper "let me in," she faints. After a while, she just faints, and when she wakes up, she thinks she's Mary. And it's not because Mary is in her body, or it's because she's still in shock. It's because her personality, her person is now Mary.
Where's Grace?
You are Grace, my dear. Grace. Your Mary has died. You've had a terrible shock.
Where's Grace?
And then she faints again, and she's Grace again. And in fact, when she comes back as Grace, she doesn't remember that what she said or did while she was Mary. And that's a very common situation in split personalities, that once, especially once the dominant personality takes over, the other personalities don't remember or don't actually know what the dominant personality said or did. The memories are completely separate for each personality. So I do believe that she killed Anna Paquin's Carter and the guy.
I'm Thomas Kinnear, your new employer.
I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. Mac McDermott. So, how is it called? McDermott?
McDermott, take Grace's things to her room.
I do believe that she murdered both of them, that she led McDermott, that she has played him. That one was Murray. I think you'll see the differences in demeanor between Grace and Mary. They're just so obvious.
As it says in the Bible, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. If it is face to face, there must be two looking.
There is, especially during the murder, you see in one situation, she is leading McDermott and she takes her handkerchief off and she strangles the woman together with McDermott. In another version, McDermott asks her for the handkerchief. She gives it to him, and you can see that she's completely terrified. She's scared, and she asks him to stop. She doesn't want him to kill anyone. The series plays really well into making you believe that this is just the binary view of whether she's guilty or innocent. And that's exactly what I think happens during the hypnosis session with Jeremiah, which, by the way, it's the only loose end of this series, I think. The only thing which I really didn't like was how they dealt with the old Jeremiah Carter, and especially Jeremiah and Grace together. They make the relationship really ambiguous. For example, when he tells her to run off with him and she accepts at the beginning, and then she thinks back about Mary and how Mary told her not to trust men's promises until they have actually given you something.
A marriage never brought anything good as far as I see. If two are of a mind to keep together, then they will. And if not, then one will run off, and that's the long and short of it.
I think I had better stay here then.
You never understand whether it's because it's actually just another man taking advantage of her or women in general, and Mary is completely right, or if it's just because he's just a guy who doesn't want to get married, doesn't like the idea of marriage, and just wants to be with her, and it will actually be with her, not necessarily betray her. This sort of ambiguity would have been fine by itself if it wasn't fueled with so many other ambiguous reactions that are just not understandable. Like, for example, oh wow, after 15 years that she's been imprisoned, Jeremiah all of a sudden appears out of nowhere, and it's pretty obvious by his reaction and by how he's trying to make her understand during the scene in which she meets him again, that he wants to help her. Why did you wait 15 years to come and help me? Second of all, why the hell didn't you talk and agreed on what to actually do? And third of all, he was not an actual hypnotist. It was just, he just plays people.
Wouldn't that be a deception and a cheat?
Oh, no more than a theater. If people wish to believe a thing, if they long for it and depend on it to be true, is it cheating to help them to their own belief? Or is it not rather a charity?
Which is pretty convenient, Jeremiah, but I like you anyway because you're hot. Jeremiah. What I was saying? Instead, all of the sudden, look, it actually works. He's an hypnotist. Because it works, because I believe that in that scene, it's Mary speaking. I mean, it's pretty clear that when he hypnotizes her, Mary takes over and she tells the truth. So she tells exactly what she thinks about the doctor to his face, and she talks about having killed them. She also says that she's Mary and that Grace was there but was also not there.
I was there all along.
There?
Here. Where I am now with Grace.
And that Grace has different memories. And we see a flashback into we see Grace being Grace, having a really out of touch look, being in the garden, while supposedly we know by the timeline that we've been shown before that McDermott was inside killing Anna Paquin's character. That was Grace. That was Grace's memory, and then she doesn't remember anything anymore. But I was talking about Jeremiah. If he was there to help her, why didn't they discuss before going into the session? Why didn't he tell her what to say? Why didn't they agree on what to say? Why didn't they be like, oh, let's put out a show and pretend I'm innocent even though I don't know if I'm innocent or not, so they will release me. And Jeremiah will be like, yeah, I'm here to help. That didn't happen. We saved them together before doing the session, so supposedly they had some private time together beforehand. They could possibly discussed how to how to make Grace appear innocent, but they didn't. Honestly, at first, as soon as I watched it, I actually thought that they would show us in the end as a sort of flashback. I was like, oh, now they're going to play them together and have lots of sex. But no. Do you think that maybe she's pretending to be hypnotized? Obviously, I mean, that's a possible theory. Well, if Jeremiah actually cannot hypnotize anyone, and is obviously very surprised by what is happening, we may obviously think that Grace is playing and Grace is pretending to be hypnotized, but what she says and how she behaves really don't further her cause. They mention him once again in the end, while she sees on the newspaper some sort of ad about him, and she smiles and she looks fondly at him, and you don't know what the hell happened. The relationship between the two of them was just really not well developed at all, especially because Jeremiah, on my point of view, was one of the most interesting characters. The end, it's really depressing. Starting to feel the need to sleep, maybe? Yes, maybe, probably, yes. Oh yes, so it ties back what I was saying before, because you can clearly see how in the end you have Jamie, right, which was the boy, the one which had this innocent and lovable affection for her. He's the one who actually screwed her the most, if you want. He's reiterated into the series that he's the reason, his testimony is the reason why she's been convicted. She not only accepts to live with him, to have a life with him, to forgive him for everything that is done without even, having a conversation about it. They literally just went, oh, hi, you're the reason why I've been in jail for the past 30 years. Can you forgive me? Yes, you're forgiven. Fuck no. Even if you're not particularly revengeful, which Grace is not, she doesn't even think about it. So after everything that Jamie has caused Grace, he asks her to relieve her suffering over and over again for his own enjoyment, because it is pretty much implicitly said that he has some sort of sexual gratification into feeling that she has suffered and letting her tell him what she has suffered. He wants the details. And then he wants to be forgiven over and over again.
He listens to all of it, like a child listening to a fairy tale. I must confess that it reminds me of you, Dr. Jordan. You were as eager as Mr. Walsh to hear about my sufferings in life. Your cheeks would flush, and if you had ears like a dog, they would have been pricked forward, with your eyes shining and your tongue hanging out, as if you found a grouse in the bush.
And if you ask me, that's one of the most raw and incredibly painful and terrifying things I have watched lately in any TV series. At the very, very end, we see something which I found quite interesting. We see a shot of Grace, and her expression, it's kind of cryptic, but at the same time, there is a very clear change in her demeanor. And I think that's Mary. That's how I read it. I read it as Mary resurfacing and maybe plotting again. I think it left, even though I know it's a miniseries, I think it left open the possibility to use Mary's revenge once more against Jamie and against the people who wronged her. And I think if done well, it could be quite interesting, and it could be prolonged a little bit more over the first season alone. If you read the series as I read it, you will understand why I think it's pretty depressing. If you don't, that's totally fine. The series has obviously been designed to be open to interpretation and to be analyzed in different ways. I would love to hear your ideas. I would love to hear what you think about my ideas. And if not, it's been nice talking to myself.